The taxi pulled away before I even got the call. My sister Bridget had stuffed her 3 kids into the back seat, handed the driver my old address and told them Auntie would be waiting. Except I hadn't lived there in 8 months. And the person who did. Let's just say karma has a sense of humor I could never have scripted myself. If you've ever been the family member everyone expects to drop everything for, the one whose boundaries get trampled because it's just this once, the one who gives all her time in the name family, then you already know where this is going. Hit that like button if you're tired of being the family doormat and subscribe to the channel because this story gets so much better than I ever imagined it could. Grab a cup of coffee as we ride together into this story. Growing up, I learned early that being the responsible one wasn't a compliment. It was a life sentence. Bridget was always the wild one, the fun one, the one who got away with everything because she had this way of making chaos look like confidence. She'd forget to study and still charm teachers into extensions. She'd blow her allowance by Tuesday and sweet-talk Dad into more by Wednesday. Rules bent around her like she had her own gravitational field. Me. I was Hazel, the backup plan. The reliable sister. The one Mom called when Bridget's car broke down at 2 a.m. The one who covered her shifts at Dad's hardware store when she decided at the last minute to drive to the coast with friends. I told myself it was just what sisters do. That family meant showing up. But showing up for Bridget meant she never had to grow up. By the time we were adults, the pattern had fossilized into something I didn't know how to break. She got married at 23 to a guy named Troy who worked in sales and talked a lot about deals that were always about to close. They had 3 kids in 4 years. Milo 8. The twins Jasmine and Jordan 6. Loud, energetic, sweet kids who deserved better than parents who treated responsibility like a hobby they'd get to eventually. I loved those kids. I really did. But loving them didn't mean I had to be their full-time backup parent. Bridget called it helping family. I called it what it was. Free childcare whenever she felt like having a life. It started small. An hour here, an afternoon there. Then it became the weekend. Then it became, hey Hazel, Troy and I really need a break. Can you take them Friday through Sunday? Without asking about my plans. No consideration that I had a life, a job, a tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the city that I'd worked my tail off to afford. The breaking point came on a Thursday in late September. I was at my desk at Crestwood Marketing staring at a campaign pitch due by 5 p.m. when my phone buzzed. Bridget's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. I knew that tone before I even heard it, that breezy, entitled lilt that meant she wanted something. Hey Hayes, she chirped. Quick favor. Troy and I got last-minute tickets to this wine-tasting thing in Napa this weekend. It's kind of a big deal for his work. Can you take the kids Friday night through Sunday? I closed my eyes and took a breath. Bridget, I can't. I have plans. Plans. She laughed like I'd told a joke. Come on, what plans? You're always free. I'm not always free, I said, keeping my voice level. I have a work event Saturday and I'm seeing someone Sunday. That last part was a slight stretch. I had a second date with a guy named Aaron who actually listened when I talked and didn't treat my time like a public resource. But whether it was a date or just me needing space didn't matter. The point was I said no. Hazel, seriously? This is important for Troy's career. We never get to do anything. You know how hard it is with 3 kids. I know, I said. But I'm not available. There was a pause. Then her voice shifted. Wow. Good to know where I stand. Bridget. No, I get it. You're too busy for your family now. Must be nice. She hung up. I stared at my phone, my stomach twisting. That guilt, thick and familiar, tried to climb up my throat. But I swallowed it down. I'd said no. For once I'd actually said no. I should have known she wouldn't accept it. Friday afternoon I left work early to get ready for Aaron. We were planning to check out this new Korean barbecue spot downtown and I was actually excited. I'd even bought a new blouse, deep green, the kind that made me feel like someone who had her life together. I was halfway through my makeup when my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked it up. Hello. Hi, is this Hazel Brennan? A man's voice, uncertain. Yes. This is Officer Campos with the Portland PD. I'm calling because we have 3 children here who were dropped off at a residence on Maple Street, and the homeowner says they were told you'd be picking them up. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, what? 3 kids. Milo, Jasmine, and Jordan. He paused. They say their mom put them in a taxi and sent them to your address. But the person living there doesn't know them and called us. I sat down hard on my bed. Bridget had actually done it. She'd put her kids in a taxi and sent them to my apartment after I explicitly said no. Except I didn't live on Maple Street anymore. I moved 8 months ago. Officer, I said slowly, I don't live at that address anymore. I moved in January. Those are my sister's kids. There was a pause. Your sister sent her children to an address she thought was yours? Apparently. And you told her you weren't available to watch them? Yes. Yesterday. Another pause. Longer this time. Ma'am, do you have contact information for the mother? I gave him Bridget's number, my hands shaking and my brain was racing. She put 3 kids in a taxi. Alone. To an address she didn't even verify I still lived at. What if the person living there now had been dangerous? What if they hadn't called the police? The officer thanked me and hung up. I sat there staring at the wall, my date completely forgotten. 20 minutes later, Bridget called. What the hell, Hazel? I didn't even let her finish. What the hell? Are you serious right now? The cops called me. They said you refused to take the kids. I didn't refuse. I wasn't there. Because I don't live there anymore, Bridget. I moved. 8 months ago. Silence. You moved. Yes. You didn't tell me? I laughed. I told you. I told Mom and I told Dad. You didn't listen because you never listen. Well, how was I supposed to know? Maybe by asking. Or by not dumping your kids on someone who explicitly said no. Her voice turned sharp. They're family, Hazel. You're supposed to help. Help, yes. Be your unpaid or on-call nanny. No. You're unbelievable. No, Bridget. You're unbelievable. You put 3 kids in a taxi. Alone. To an address you didn't even confirm. Do you understand how dangerous that is? She was quiet for a beat, then said, They're fine. They're fine because the person living there now called the cops instead of ignoring them. You got lucky. Whatever. I have to go pick them up now. Her voice dripped with resentment, like I'd inconvenienced her. She hung up. I sat there furious and shaking. But also something else. Relieved. Because for the first time I hadn't caved. I hadn't rushed to fix her mess. And the universe had backed me up in the most poetic way possible. But I didn't know yet just how poetic it would get. I found out 2 days later who lived at my old apartment. Her name was Vanessa Pritchard. And she was a social worker for Child Protective Services. I only learned this because she called me Sunday morning. Hi, is this Hazel Brennan? Yes. This is Vanessa Pritchard. I'm the one who called the police on Friday about the children who were dropped at my door. Oh. Hi. I'm so sorry about that. That was my sister. She didn't know I moved. I figured. Her voice was calm and professional, but there was something underneath it. I wanted to reach out because after what happened, I'm required to file a report. My stomach flipped. A report. Yes. When children are abandoned or placed in unsafe situations, we have to document it. The police report already flags it, but given that I work in child welfare, I also have an obligation to follow up. I didn't know what to say. She continued. I want to be clear. I'm not trying to cause problems for your family. But what your sister did was reckless. Those kids were dropped off by a taxi driver who didn't verify anyone was home. They stood on my porch for 10 minutes before I opened the door. They're 6 and 8 years old. I know, I said quietly. I told her I couldn't watch them. She did it anyway. I figured as much. Vanessa paused. Look, I'm calling because I wanted you to know what's happening. CPS will likely reach out to your sister for a welfare check. It's standard procedure. I'm not trying to punish anyone, but this can't just disappear. I understand. Also, she added, her tone softening slightly, I'm sorry you got dragged into this. Boundaries are hard, especially with family. I almost cried. A stranger understood what my own sister refused to. Thank you, I managed. After we hung up, I sat on my couch staring at nothing. Bridget was about to get a visit from CPS. Because of her own choices. And I didn't feel guilty. The fallout was immediate. Bridget called me Monday night. They came to my house, Hazel. CPS came to my house. I know. You know, did you call them? No. The woman who lives at my old place works for CPS. She's required to file a report when kids are abandoned. They weren't abandoned. Bridget, you put them in a taxi. To a stranger's house. I thought it was your house. Which I told you I'd moved from. And even if I still lived there, I said no. He was crying now, angry, jagged sobs. They asked me all these questions. About how I discipline them. About Troy's job and our finances. They made me feel like a criminal. They're doing their job. This is your fault. I stayed quiet. If you just helped me. Stop, I said, my voice harder than I'd ever used with her. This is not my fault. You made a choice and you ignored my boundary. You put your kids at risk. Now you're dealing with the consequences. They're going to keep checking on us now. Do you know what that means? Do you know how humiliating it's? Then maybe you should have thought about that before you dumped 3 kids at a random address. He sucked in a breath. I can't believe you. You're really going to act like you did nothing wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I said no. That's allowed. The family doesn't say no. Family doesn't exploit each other either, Bridget. But here we are. She hung up on me. I set my phone down and exhaled slowly. My hands weren't shaking this time. My chest didn't feel tight. It felt clear. Like I'd finally stepped out of a fog I'd been living in for years. But the storm wasn't over. By Tuesday my mom was calling. Hazel, honey, what's going on with you and Bridget? I explained everything. The request, my refusal, the taxi, the old address, and the CPS. Mom listened quietly, then sighed. Sweetheart, I know Bridget can be a lot. But she's overwhelmed. 3 kids is hard. And Troy's work situation. Mom, she put those kids in danger. She made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pack lunches. This was deliberate, Mom. She ignored what I said and did it anyway. She was desperate. She was entitled, not desperate. Mom was quiet for a moment. Then softer, Hazel, I'm not saying she was right. But maybe you could have just helped this one time. And there was the same script. The same expectation and assumption that my boundaries were negotiable if they inconvenienced someone else. Mom, I love you. But I'm not discussing this anymore. I said no. Bridget ignored it. What happened after that is on her. You're being very cold. I'm being clear. Your sister is struggling. Then maybe she and Troy need to figure out their life instead of expecting me to subsidize it. Mom didn't call back after that. I knew how this would go. I'd be painted as the selfish one, the sister who abandoned family when they needed her most. Bridget would milk the victim narrative and everyone would nod sympathetically. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going back. The CPS visit wasn't a one-time thing. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa's report triggered a series of follow-ups. A caseworker named Angela started doing random welfare checks, calling Bridget to verify the kids were in school, asking neighbors questions. I only knew this because Dad called me frustrated. Hazel, this has gone too far. Your sister's a wreck. They're treating her like a neglectful parent. Dad, she sent 3 kids to a stranger's house. She thought it was your house. Moved. He sighed. I know you're upset. But can't you talk to that woman? The one who called CPS? Tell her it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. And even if I wanted to, I can't tell a social worker to drop a case. That's not how it works. So you're just going to let your sister suffer? I'm going to let her deal with the consequences of her own actions. Like an adult. Dad didn't like that answer. He muttered something about family loyalty and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone waiting for the guilt to hit. It didn't. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because for the first time someone else was holding Bridget accountable. Not me or my parents. It was the system. And I hadn't lifted a finger. 3 weeks after the incident, Bridget posted on Facebook. I wasn't friends with her anymore. I'd quietly unfriended her days after the CPS visit. But my cousin Lacey sent me a screenshot. The post was long, rambling, with performative vulnerability. I've been going through the hardest time of my life. As a mother of 3, I'm constantly stretched thin, and recently I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong person to help me, and now my family is being investigated like criminals. If you're a parent, you know how terrifying it is to have strangers questioning every choice you make. I'm sharing this because I want other moms to know. Protect yourselves. Not everyone who says they love you will actually show up when you need them most. The comments were full of heart emojis and stay strong mama messages. She didn't mention the taxi. Or ignoring when I said no. Just a vague villain, me wrapped in martyr language. Lacey texted, Is she serious right now? I didn't reply. What was there to say? Bridget had always been good at rewriting history. This was just her latest draft. But then something unexpected happened. Someone commented. Wait, is this about the thing where you sent your kids to someone's house without asking? My friend's neighbor is a social worker and mentioned a case like this. You can't just drop kids off at random addresses and then act shocked when people react. I stared at the screenshot. Another comment appeared under it. Yeah, I heard about this too. Weren't the kids sent to the wrong house? That's not a mistake, that's dangerous. Then another. If someone tells you no and you do it anyway, that's not them failing you. That's you failing to respect boundaries. The thread started growing. People Bridget didn't even know were chiming in, pointing out the holes in her story. Within hours she deleted the post. Lacey texted again, "Oh, she's big mad now." I smiled. Not out of spite, but because the truth had a way of surfacing even when people tried to bury it. A month later I got a call from Vanessa. "Hi Hazel. I wanted to update you on the case." "Oh. Okay. The welfare checks are complete. The children are safe, the home environment is stable enough, and your sister has completed a parenting course as part of the agreement to close the case." "A parenting course?" "Yes. It's standard when there's been a lapse in judgment that puts children at risk." She wasn't happy about it, but she completed it. "The case is closed now." I exhaled. "Thank you for letting me know." "Of course." Vanessa paused. "And Hazel? For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary." After we hung up, I sat with that for a long time. Bridget had to take a parenting course. Not because I reported her or because I plotted revenge, but because her own actions forced accountability. And I was free. The months that followed were quiet. Bridget didn't call. Neither did my parents, not often anyway. They'd occasionally send neutral texts, "Hope you're well." But the demand for my time, my energy, my compliance had evaporated. I saw the kids once at a family birthday party for my niece in December. They ran up to me excited, full of stories. Milo showed me a drawing. Jasmine bragged about losing a tooth. Jordan asked if I still had the puzzle we'd done together last Christmas. I hugged them. I listened and I loved them. But when Bridget asked, casually like nothing had happened, if I could watch them on New Year's Eve, I smiled and said, "I can't. But I hope you find someone." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't push. Because she'd learned. Not that I was cruel. But that wasn't her fallback plan anymore. I used to think family meant sacrificing yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. That love was measured in how much you could endure before breaking. I was wrong. Real love doesn't ignore boundaries. It doesn't punish you for having them. And it definitely doesn't put children in taxis to manipulate you into compliance. What happened with Bridget wasn't something I planned. I didn't orchestrate her meeting with CPS. I didn't engineer the parenting course or the welfare checks. I just said no. And the consequences that followed weren't mine to carry. The system did what I couldn't. It held her accountable without requiring me to be the villain. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty or regret not just taking the kids that one weekend to avoid all the drama. The answer is no. Because that one weekend was never just one weekend. It was years of being the backup plan, the unpaid labor, the person whose life mattered less. And I'm done with that story. Now I'm writing a new one. One where I show up for people who respect me. Where I help when I can, not when I'm coerced. Where my time, my space, and my peace aren't up for negotiation. Bridget and I aren't close anymore. Maybe we never really were. But I don't hate her. I just don't owe her access to my life. And honestly, I've never felt this way my whole life. If this story hits home for you, if you've ever been the one expected to bend until you break, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you believe boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. And remember, saying no to the wrong people is how you finally say yes to yourself. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.